You remember how your parents tried to teach you to manage emotions? You probably don't remember what they started out to do first of all, but that bottle they shoved in your mouth when you cried. And then when that didn't work, they put a pacifier in your mouth. And then as you got a little older, they may have spanked you. And then they may have said, grow up. Or they may have said, get over it. And none of those approaches were really very effective, were they, in helping you manage your emotions? And so now here you are, an adult, and you're smoking and drinking, which is your pacifier. And you've got this critical parent sitting on you who says, why don't you just grow up, or you're married to one. My wife is not a therapist, but she has really three responses that she gives me in trying to handle my emotions. One is get over it. The other is grow up. And the third is just do it. And she thinks that she could help people much more rapidly than I do if they would just sit and listen to those three things. So I told her that I think she'd go broke. Well, what do I want to do tonight? I first of all want to try to help you become comfortable with all your emotions. And secondly, I want to help you learn how to contain your emotions, because if you don't learn how to contain your emotions, you're not going to learn how to be able to manage them. And then thirdly, to learn how to express your emotions constructively using some of the skills that you have already been taught in marital restoration. So, first of all, how to become comfortable with our feelings. The first belief that I want you to begin to hold on to is this one: all my feelings are okay. All my feelings are okay. Now, I'm not telling you that feelings aren't a problem sometimes, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But what I am saying to you is approach feelings as though they are facts, not like they are morals. Approach feelings like they are facts, not like they are morals. Feelings are what is, they are not what should be. They are what is, what not should be. Now, feelings are absolutely essential to you and I being human beings. You cut out our feelings and we are like a zombie or a robot, and we're not very fun to live with. But if our feelings are not managed, we are not very fun to live with. Feelings are very important because they define who we really are as a human being. Feelings are not a sign of weakness or immaturity or insanity. In spite of what some people may have said to you as you have been growing up, feelings are not a sign of weakness or immaturity or insanity. Now, this is particularly important for the men in the audience to hear, because for you and I as men, we were brought up to believe that something's wrong with us when we feel. And as we have been playing and living, our male friends laughed at us and teased us when we had feelings. And so you and I as men, there are basically two places that we allow ourselves to have feelings. One is in athletics and the other is in bed. And those are not two places that are enough for us to have feelings. Our wives are dying for us to be able to share our feelings. And feelings for a woman is what intimacy is for a woman. So you and I as men need to learn something about what feelings are and need to give ourselves permission to have those feelings, or we cannot really be intimate with our wives. Now let me tell you something shocking. Feelings to a wife is like sexual intercourse for a man. You hear that? Feelings for a wife is like sexual intercourse for a man. So if, as men, we can understand that any time we share our feelings with our wife, it is very much like what we experience when we're physically intimate with our wife. Feelings are okay, so there is no shame for what we feel. No shame for being scared or angry or sad. Now, there may be shame that we need to feel for our behavior, because our behavior can be illegal, immoral, and fattening. But feelings are not illegal, immoral, or fattening. We don't have to hide from our emotions. And if we do hide from our emotions, what happens is that we really camouflage who we really are, and our spouse doesn't really know us unless we share our feelings. So when I come home at night and I'm having dinner with my wife, she asks me, "How am I?" And what she wants to know is, what have I been feeling through the day? Not what have I said to clients, but how have I been feeling? And if I can share what I feel, then she feels close to me. We don't want to judge our emotions. We don't want to dismiss them or discount them or deny them or disapprove of them. And we won't do that if we begin to accept the fact that our feelings are okay. Now, I've already suggested to you that feelings are really the substance of intimate relationships. And if my feelings are not okay, then my relationships will not be satisfying, because I will not share something that's not okay with me with you, my spouse. My feelings are important to me because they tell me to pay attention to what is happening in my life. We need to look at feelings as being a resource for us. Our feelings do not lie to us. They tell us that something very important is going on. What I want you to remember is that feelings are not just a female thing, they are a male thing. Men have the same range and intensity of feelings as women. It's just that as men, we find feelings rather inconvenient. Now, if my feelings are okay, then I'm going to be able to accept a very important part of who I am. I'm going to accept my feelings. I'm going to own them, and I'm going to understand them. So here is the principle. All my feelings make sense. All my feelings make sense, even if I can't make sense out of them at the moment. But if I assume that the irritation I feel, or the sadness I feel, or the scare I feel makes sense, then I'm going to be able to honor those experiences and begin to explore what those feelings are all about. If I reject or disown my feelings, then that will put me in a very vulnerable place. And the vulnerable place it will put me is that I've got to push myself away from whatever relationship I am in. Feelings must go somewhere. And if I don't accept them and learn how to express them, what happens is they stay in our body. And if feelings do not get expressed, they stay in our body in the form of headaches, backaches, ulcers, heart attacks, immune diseases. Feelings have got to go somewhere. So one of the principles is that we need to let our feelings out on a regular basis to make sure that they don't stay inside. Now, how feelings are expressed, where they are expressed, to whom they are expressed, when they are expressed, become really crucial decisions. And I'm going to talk about more how to voice our feelings in just a moment. So all my feelings are okay. All my feelings need to be accepted because they do make sense. And thirdly, all my feelings are okay, but they can become problematic when they are not processed. Now, what do I mean when I say that feelings aren't processed? If I don't process my anger, that can turn into rage. If I don't process my feelings, they become toxic and they become poisonous and they begin to affect and infect everything that I do and say. If feelings aren't processed, then my hurt can turn into resentment and bitterness, which isn't very helpful. When my scare turns into obsessive worry or chronic anxiety, then my feelings are problematic. When my sadness turns into chronic complaining or into depression or suicidal thoughts or attempts, then feelings are a problem. So what does it mean to process emotions? The Bible says in Ephesians 4:27, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. And the biblical principle is make sure that you deal with your feelings on a regular basis. Ideally, make sure you deal with your feelings on a daily basis. Don't let feelings accumulate. Because if they accumulate, they will contaminate everything that happens next in your life. If I'm irritated at my wife today and I don't talk to her about being irritated, then tomorrow she may do something that is rather insignificant, but because I have this irritation from yesterday, she's going to get yesterday's irritation today, and it doesn't belong to today. And this is what's happened to many of us in our marriages, is that our feelings have built up and built up and built up, and we haven't been able to process them and finish them. So there is a slight irritation in the relationship, and we dump years of feelings on our spouse. Whenever we overreact, whenever the emotion is more intense than what it should be at the moment, we know that there is history involved, that those feelings have accumulated. So to process feelings means that we need to learn how to walk through our feelings, and I'm going to give you six steps on how to process your feelings in just a moment. To process feelings means that I need to learn how to express my feelings in such a way that it frees me from being overwhelmed with the feelings. And not only does it free me from being overwhelmed with feelings, but it then leaves me free to make choices about how I'm going to respond to feelings. And if I haven't processed my feelings, then I really don't have much of a choice, because I got this backload of pressure of feelings that's going to come out without my really being able to control it. And that's really my next point. I cannot control the experience of my feelings, but I can control their expression. What do I mean when I say I can't control the experience of my feelings? Let's assume that somebody walks in and they have a submachine gun, and they come up here on the stage and they show it at us, and they don't shoot, they just show it at us. All of us in this room would probably be panic-stricken, right? We'd be scared. Now, given this is Willow, you might think that it's part of a drama rather than a real thing. But assuming that it was a real thing, you would be scared. I remember driving my daughter's car on a winter day, and all the cars were stopped ahead of me, and there were fire engines coming down this way. I stepped on the brakes, and the car skidded, spun around, and I was going backwards into where the fire trucks were. I had no choice about what I was feeling. My heart was pounding and pounding and pounding, and I was scared. My feelings happened just like that. Now, what am I going to do with the feelings? That's what I have a choice, to do something about the feelings. How am I going to express that? Someone cuts me off while I'm driving. I have no choice about whether I'm feeling anger. The anger is right there. Now, what I can do is I do have choice about saying, "The Lord bless you and keep you." I cannot control the experience of my feelings, but I can control the expression of my feelings. What I'm saying is that feelings happen. Feelings happen, but the behavioral response can be chosen. When I feel what I feel it right now. How I react to that feeling is something that I can learn to choose. I have no choice, no conscious choice about feeling what I feel. But I have a conscious choice about being how I'm going to react. And I have that conscious choice the more I learn how to process my feelings. Now, when I react to my feelings, that is, when I don't process them, then my conscious choice is really eliminated and is really limited. And if my feelings have accumulated and I'm going to dump them, I almost have to dump them, when our feeling bin is full, then I don't have any choice. So it becomes really crucial that for me to have a choice about how I'm going to process an emotion, that I bring my feeling bin is empty today. So I can put in those feelings for today and learn to process them and decide when and where I'm going to express them. Now, one of the things that we need to understand is that a present situation can trigger feelings that belong to the present, but a present situation can trigger feelings that belong to the past. And anytime our feelings are exaggerated and intense, that tells us that either our feelings belong also to the past or our spouse's feelings belong to the past. And when the feelings belong to the past, the chances are that we are going to respond in one of two ways. One, we're going to explode, which means that we are going to yell and shout and swear and say things that we regret after we calm down. Or we may be too terrified to put our feelings into words, and so we will implode them, which means that we will stuff them more for a later time, and then the chances are that they are going to explode. Now, why do we implode? I happen to be one of those people that have grown up with imploding his feelings rather than exploding his feelings, because I grew up in a family that every time I was scared or angry or sad, I got punished for it. And I got punished either verbally by my parents telling me to grow up or to shut up, or that as a Christian I shouldn't feel that way, or I got my mouth stuffed with soap or liniment, some way to tell me, okay, you're a smart guy, keep your mouth shut here. And so I have learned how to keep my mouth shut. Now, coming into my marriage, I have learned how to keep my mouth shut. And guess what? My wife wants me to open my mouth. My wife is not going to slap me or put liniment or soap in my mouth. But the little boy in me still says, oh, be careful, Dave. You know that this is dangerous to put your feelings into words. And so I have been in therapy a couple times trying to learn how to put my feelings into words. The second time I was in therapy, my wife said to me as I was about halfway through my process, I think I liked you a little bit more when you didn't put your feelings into words. So for someone who implodes, what we're scared of is our own feelings. Or we may be scared that we're going to hurt somebody else. But really behind that fear that we're going to hurt somebody else is we're afraid that if we speak truthfully about what we feel, that person is going to reject us or hurt us. Feelings become problematic when they are not processed. And so here I want to give you 6 steps to processing feelings. And they all start with an F or a V. Face your feelings, feel your feelings, validate your feelings, voice your feelings, frame your feelings, and finish your feelings. First of all, face your feelings. My feelings do not make me bad. They make me human. And so if I can identify my feelings and own my feelings, then I'm going to be able to really face them. My feelings tell me that I am really alive. And they tell me to pay attention to what is going on in my world. They really are a resource. So if I believe that, then I can begin to face my feelings. Now, if I face my feelings, I need to have some idea of what feelings really are. And so somewhere along the line, I have picked up an acronym for the 6 basic feelings, most basic feelings. It's SASHET. I think I've written it on your notes. S-A-S-H-E-T. And they stand for scare, anger, sad, happy, excited, and tender. Now, there are a lot more feeling words than those 6, but those are the only 6 feeling words that you'll ever need. And I particularly am suggesting that to men because you don't need to have 100 feeling words. You just have to have those 6. So when your wife asks you what you're feeling, just take out your little card and say, am I feeling scared or angry or sad or happy or excited or tender? And she'll be very happy if you can identify one or more of those feelings. Now, I can face my feelings when I recognize that I have them. Now, the problem is that for us as men, we often don't know what the emotional feeling is. We have a physiological reaction. So, when our wife says, "What are you feeling?" you may have some feeling here in your gut, some physical sensation in your gut. You may have something in your jaw. You may have something in your back. But you may not be able to put an emotion to it. So just talk about what that physical sensation is. You know, I feel nauseated. I feel hungry. She already knows you're horny, so you don't have to tell her that. And it may be that you can't put a physical reaction to it or an emotional reaction to it, but you have an impulse. And an impulse is a desire to act in a certain way. Like, I want to run away, or I want to hit something, or I want to yell or scream. And so even being able to put that impulse into words would be helpful. And maybe you can't identify the physical sensations or the emotional feelings or the behavioral impulses, but you know that you have certain thoughts. Like, this is what I'm thinking. And just telling your wife what you think will be very, very useful. When I acknowledge that all my feelings are okay, I'm going to be able to recognize them, I'm going to be able to own them, I'm going to be able to start sharing them. Feel the feelings, the second step. Feel the feelings. Now, I'm not talking about having a pity party. I'm talking about being able to embrace the feelings. And here's the principle. You cannot heal a feeling that you don't feel. You only can heal what you feel. So if you got this feeling and you're stuffing it, you're not going to be able to heal that feeling unless you're able to feel it. A few months ago, my dad died. And in the grieving process, it becomes very important for people to be able to not only own that feeling and feel that feeling. And so when sadness comes to me, if I take a moment just to experience that sadness, and sometimes it comes out in tears, sometimes it comes out in thoughts, and to be able to share that means that I become free of that grieving feeling. So 4 months ago, my grieving feelings was much more intense than my grieving feelings today. And that's what happens when we feel our feelings, is that they become much less intense over time when we allow ourselves to experience them. So we need to learn how to experience our feelings both emotionally and physically if we are to process them. Now, what's interesting about feeling feelings is that most of us have a default mode that says, I don't want to go to that pain. I don't want to go to that feeling. And feelings sometimes can be very, very painful. But the same thing is true emotionally as is true physically. No pain, no gain. No pain, no gain. Those of you who work out, you don't work out so you feel the pain. That's not the purpose of having pain. But you know that when you get to a certain point of discomfort, that you probably ought to stop, that you probably have done the work that you need to do. And the same thing happens to us emotionally, is that when we begin to feel the pain, then we know that we are doing our work and are taking the next step. I want to remind you about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Most of you know that story, where he brings his disciples and says, pray with me an hour, and he goes over and kneels by a stone and starts praying, and he starts agonizing. He starts feeling, he starts crying, he starts debating and arguing with God. He starts saying, I don't think I want to go through this. And then there's something very remarkable that happens. After several hours of doing this and asking his disciples to participate with him, in which they didn't, he says, okay, I'm ready. And the Bible says that he went toward Jerusalem joyfully looking forward to what was going to happen next. He knew he was going to die, but he came to peace with that. So if you remember that when you feel your feelings, That brings you to a place of healing and to resolution. Now, I need to own my feelings if I am to process them. And here's what becomes difficult. If I own my feelings, then I say that I am responsible for my feelings. So I can't say to you, you made me mad. You made me scared. You made me sad. I've got to say, I am feeling scared or angry and sad. I am responsible for my feelings, even if my spouse provokes them. I am responsible for my feelings, even if my spouse provokes them. Now, my spouse is responsible for the provocation, but I am responsible for my feelings. My spouse can't do anything about my feelings. I have to do something about my feelings. And what I have to learn how to do, what to do with my feelings is I have to learn how to contain them if I'm going to learn how to express them. Now, by contain, I do not mean stuff your feelings. I mean to be able to hold on to them, to be able to retain them in a way and at such a time that you're able to express them in a way that's positive and constructive. And if I'm going to contain my feelings, then I got to be aware of my feelings. I have to own my feelings. I have to legitimatize them as valid and real, and I have to put meaning to that. And I'm going to talk about validating those feelings and putting meaning to them in just a moment. But how do I contain my feelings? Many of us have been taught that we should count to 10 when we have a very intense feeling. And so that can be very, very helpful. Some of you who have been in therapy have learned how to breathe deeply, how to breathe from your diaphragm so that you're able to manage your feelings physiologically. Some of you have been taught how to do muscle relaxation. So you start from your toes and tighten your toes, and then you tighten the muscle groups all the way up to the top of your head as a way of containing feelings. Some of us have been taught how to pray as a way of containing our feelings. And that's very, very fascinating. To pray for somebody that has hurt you isn't all that easy to do, is it? To bless somebody that is persecuting you isn't all that easy to do, but it's very effective at managing and containing your feelings. The interesting thing about containing the feelings is that the little boy and the little girl in us doesn't want to contain the feelings. That little boy and little girl in us wants to act those feelings out. And if we have an adult side of us, that adult can say, okay, you feel what you feel, but we're going to find a way to do that. But all of us have another part of us, that critical parent or that conscience that says, shame on you for feeling that. You know better than that. You shouldn't feel that. And so we have to learn to contain our feelings by developing that adult part of us that can deal with the little boy in us and that strict conscience in us, because if the conscience tries to deal with the feelings, it's not going to be very constructive. And if the little child in us tries to deal with the feelings, it's not going to be very constructive. It has got to be the growing up part of us that deals with those feelings. It is more difficult for men to contain feelings physiologically than it is for women. It takes men longer to calm down physiologically. Wives, that's why your husband walks away. That's why he goes to his cave. That's why he goes out and works on the car, because he's having an awful hard time managing his feelings. Now, for you as women, it is harder for you to contain your feelings emotionally. So your husband has an argument with you, he's upset, he leaves, he comes back in an hour, he takes you by the hand and says, let's go to bed and make love. And you say, you got to be kidding. I am still mad at you. And he says, can't you ever forget anything? And it takes you longer to process your emotions emotionally. And so what men have to understand is that they have to come back, and even though they are somewhat finished with their feelings, have got to pick that up with their wife and say, I know emotionally that you are not done. Let's talk some more about that. And here's the principle. the more the man remembers about his wife's upset, the faster the wife can forget. The more or the sooner that the husband remembers his wife's upset, the quicker the wife can forget. Now, that one point is worth your admission tonight. And your wife will rise and call you blessed if you practice that. If we're going to contain our feelings, we have to learn how to stay current with our feelings. And to stay current with our feelings means that we deal with them each day. And that is very, very difficult, but absolutely crucial that we deal with them every day. Thirdly, the third step is to validate our feelings. Oh, let me say one other thing about containing feelings. There are some of us where we're going to have a hard time containing our feelings because we have a biochemical deficiency. And that biochemical deficiency means that your brain chemistry is depleted either by depression or anxiety or attention deficit or whatever, and you may actually need some medication to help you contain your feelings. Now, this is not shameful. This is not bad. It is a reality. I live with a woman who has a problem managing her anger, and when she went on an antidepressant, it's like the anger disappeared. I have clients who have trouble managing their anxiety. They even have panic disorders, and when they take Klonopin or Xanax or something, they're able to manage. So if you're unable to manage your feelings, it may be not only that it could be that you're immature and you need to grow up, but it could be that your biochemistry is messed up and you really need to talk to your counselor or to your doctor about the possibility that you need some outside help to help you with that. Okay, now validate the feelings. By validate the feelings, I don't mean that you agree that those feelings are right and good, but that they make sense. That they make sense. And here is how to make sense out of your feelings. You want to ask yourself, what does this feeling tell me about what I need? What does this feeling tell me about what I need? My feelings tell me that I need something, I value something, I perceive something. And we cannot validate our feelings unless we can identify what the need is and what the value is and what we're perceiving. And I'm going to help you identify that in just a moment. But as a parenthesis to say that we've got to be careful that we do not project our feelings onto our spouse. Now, project is a fancy word that means you are now responsible for my feelings. I'm not going to take responsibility for the feelings. And there are 4 things that we do to project our feelings onto our spouse. So if we're critical of our spouse, we're not owning our feelings. If we criticize our spouse, we're not saying something about what we feel and what we need. We're saying, you need to change. In other words, a criticism is the opposite of making a request. A criticism is the opposite of making a request. So if I criticize you, I'm really trying to say to you, look, this is a request, but if I criticize you, you're not going to hear that. You're going to get defensive, right? Yes, right. You're going to get defensive. Secondly, we project our feelings when we shame and blame our spouse. We project our feelings when we shame and blame our spouse. You shouldn't feel that. You're a Christian and you feel that? You're 50 years old and you're still struggling with that? When are you going to get over this? If shame and blame worked, every one of us as counselors would be out of business overnight. If shame and blame worked, we would be out of business overnight. Thirdly, we project our feelings when we disrespect another person. When we disrespect another person, we are not owning our feelings. And lastly, we project our feelings, we don't own our feelings when we withdraw and isolate. Fourthly, voice the feelings. And here is where some of this might become really common and familiar to you. When I talk about voicing the feelings, I'm talking about having a personal and relational power. A personal and relational power. When I have a voice, when I can say what's going on inside, then I am empowered. Not empowered over you, but I am empowered to be able to deal with myself and to deal with you. If I don't have a voice, then my options are very limited. If I don't have a voice, then I get passive-aggressive. And passive-aggressive is just a fancy way of saying is instead of telling you directly that I'm scared or I'm angry or I'm sad, is I just don't make you supper. Or I show up late. Or I tell a joke when I'm really telling you something serious, but I won't own the fact that I'm telling you serious. Or if I don't have a voice, it means that I might have tremendous anxiety. I might not be able to sleep. I might not be able to eat. I might not be able to drive. I might be a nervous wreck. I might feel like I'm going to jump right out of my skin. And when we have anxiety, it means that we haven't been able to put our feelings into words. Or it may mean that I get depressed. People who go to depression frequently do not feel like they have a right to their feelings or that they can voice their feelings. So I need to voice my feelings, to learn how to express my feelings respectfully and constructively and directly. I grew up in a family that didn't know how to express feelings directly. So we expressed feelings in teasing. And I about destroyed my marriage because I was a tease. Instead of telling my wife what I was really thinking and feeling, I would tease her. And the first year of my marriage, she was frequently in tears. And my response to that is, I'm only kidding. You know, why are you taking this so personally? When are you going to grow up? And you know how that really helped our marriage. So I had to learn how to put my feelings into words. And the way I had to learn that is to identify what my needs were, what my point of view, what my values were, being able to say, I have a right to have a point of view here. I have a right to a voice here. So what is the purpose of voicing feelings? It is to begin dialogue. It is to begin dialogue. And that's what you have been getting to learn about here, particularly with empathic communication. You cannot be empathic if you can't voice your feelings and if you can't hear the other person's feelings. Now I want to give you a formula for voicing feelings. And the formula is this. I feel blank. And the blank is scared, angry, sad, happy, excited, or tender. When you blank, and the blank is when you look at me this way, when you talk to me this way, when you act this way, because I need blank. Because I need blank. And the blank is because I need respect. I need safety. I need trust. I need esteem. I need love. I need a sense of belonging. All kinds of needs in there. So the formula is, I feel angry, for example, when you don't let me know that you are going out to speak because I need to be valued and treasured as your wife. So one of the things that I do is, if I remember, is put on the calendar that on February 20th, I'm speaking at Willow Creek, and I won't be home for supper. And at the beginning of the week, yesterday I said, you know, I'm going to be speaking at Willow tomorrow night. And she said, yes, I remember. And when I left this morning and I said goodbye, I said, I won't be home for supper. And when I left my office to come here tonight, I gave her a call just to remind her that I was thinking of her and telling her that I wasn't going to be home. And she wasn't home. But I remember that she told me she wasn't going to be home. So what I'd like to do is to challenge you to use the formula in formula fashion as a way to begin to share with each other in a constructive way before you start getting away from the formula. So I feel scared when you don't let me know that you're going to be late because I need for you to be safe. Or I feel sad when you didn't buy me a Valentine's gift or card because I don't feel treasured. Now, what happens when we use the formula, I feel, when you, because I need, is our spouse will hear, I feel and I need, and won't hear, you are a jerk, you are an idiot. Okay? Because if they hear that, they're going to get defensive and fight, right? You want your spouse to hear that there's something you need. So expressing the feelings is like making a request. Expressing your feelings is like making a request. Now let's flip that over. And I got to quit here. Flip it over and you can use the same formula in responding to your wife. And that formula is, you feel when I, because you need. You feel when I, because you need. Saturday morning I was out doing errands and I came home and my wife was packing up some clothes to ship back to a supplier, and they were my clothes. And I was feeling like, well, gee, she's doing my job. So I went over to try to help her and looked at this bag and said, will these 3 items fit in there? And she got mad at me. She got irritated at me. And I said to her, okay, what's going on? She said, you're taking over. And I said, well, I'm just trying to be responsible. And she said, but you make me feel like I have no usefulness when you come and take over a job. Now, what I should have said to her is, you feel angry when I try to help because you need to have a sense that you can serve me or do something for me. Now, we got out of that argument pretty well, and the rest of the day went well. But if our spouse knows that we understand what they are feeling, and understand what we have done to provoke them, and understand what it is that we need, most arguments end pretty rapidly. So before you get home tonight, you're going to have an opportunity to say to your spouse, you feel when I, because you need. And it may be you didn't even get out of the parking lot, and you feel angry when I drive recklessly because you need to be safe. Finish the feeling. We can't always finish the feeling with one expression of feeling. We may have to go back and face the feeling, feel the feeling, validate the feeling, voice the feeling, frame the feeling. Oh, I forgot to say about frame the feeling. And this is the very important part, how to make sense out of the feeling. When I am scared, that reflects need for safety and for security, for trust. And there may be other needs there, but those are very basic needs. Are those on your outline? Okay. So, and the anger reflects needs for boundaries and for space and for have a voice and to have validation. And sadness reflects needs for managing and recovering losses and restoring faith and hope and love. So you can take that list of needs, add other needs to them, and plug it into the formula. And here's the interesting thing, is if you guess wrong about what your spouse needs, they will be very glad to tell you what they need. Isn't that neat? If you guess wrong, they will be very glad to tell you, but they will be very grateful to you that you are even trying to understand what they need. There's a lot of redemption in trying to understand what somebody needs. We got to quit. And my last point is change the way I process emotions. Change the way I process emotions. If I implode, I have to learn how to express. If I explode, I have to learn how to express. So one of you is an exploder, and the other of you is an imploder. Exploders marry imploders, and imploders marry exploders. But you have to learn to work on that. And you both have to come to a third way of dealing and managing with your emotions.